Hello, hello. This is episode number 9.
Woohoo! Almost 10.
Yeah. For this one, we have no idea what we're talking about because we haven't checked before, but we're going to, um, at least for me, it's one of my dearest topics.
Yes, I think that's why we didn't talk about it before, because what happens is that we talk before and then we say all the things that we want to say, and then when we record it, we're like, oh, we forgot to talk about that thing
Yeah,
or that thing. So
yeah. So,
that's
what's
gonna
the
be interesting.
theme? Let's say.
Dun dun dun.
We're going to talk about special education and how inclusion is done, can be done, should be done, it's not done, and a little bit about our opinion, maybe talk a little bit about legal aspects, and
Yeah.
a little bit about our experience. Be ready because we're going to have different uh, kinds of experience to talk about.
Oh, completely different, I'm sure.
And I think that it's going to be really interesting because
Hmm.
this is one thing that if you are following teachers on social media, this is one of the things that it's always mentioned. I don't know if it's just my algorithm that keeps sending me this stuff, but I
Hmm.
always see posts about teachers having to deal with inclusion and not being ready for dealing with that and not being prepared and
Yes.
not having enough PD, and that's
This
it.
week was there was this thread on, I think, Facebook, and it was like a picture, and it was the question like, is it how much longer, something like this, and should we um give the privilege to one kid instead of the other 29 we have in our classroom? And I think this was there are lots of things that can come into this question, like who is this
Yes.
one kid?
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I think it's not fair to say it's only the lack of preparation of the teacher to deal with this one kid. I think there are lots of things that are involved around. We can talk about families, we can talk about like respect, we can talk about being prepared, not being prepared. There's so many like resources, help, support. There's so many things that we can talk about. But I think it was interesting just to this question out there and the
Mm.
different types of answers that were being given. Because usually it's like, oh no, like we have to think about the 29 kids in the classroom. But what about that one?
Hmm.
So I think that's the one we're going to be talking about today.
Yeah. And let's just be clear that when we're talking about inclusion, it has to do with all kinds of inclusion, all kind of different needs. So to begin with, if we're thinking about different language needs, that's also something that we have to consider, right?
Hmm.
We're not, I don't know if we're going to talk a lot about this aspect, but that's just food for thought. Whenever you have a kid in your classroom that has a different language and that uses that language in different contexts, you also need to think about that. Even if you're not using that language, if you don't have to use that language, if you know nothing about that language, that can be something, it's something that you have to consider. I'm just going to give an example. Once I was assessing a kid, and then the kid couldn't say numbers from 1 to 10. And then the coordinator asked me, but did you ask her in Portuguese? I said, no, should I? And she said, yeah, maybe. And I said, yeah, but why Portuguese? She's Russian. And she's like, I don't know, maybe she knows in Portuguese. I said, okay, but what if she doesn't? Should I try in Russian? Should I learn how to count in 10, in tens or to 10
Hmm.
in Russian so I can assess if she knows the numbers? What is the point? Am I assessing
Hmm.
if she knows numbers in general, if she knows numbers in English? So just one thing, just one
I had
comment.
this conversation this week, and it was super interesting because, in my opinion, like if you are not in an ELA class and you just got a student that knows nothing about English, if you are doing science, if you're doing math, if you're doing social studies, you have all the right to get that activity, use technology that we have available now, translate to that kid's first language, and let them figure it out, especially in the beginning, because it's one thing already thinking that you don't know how to communicate with people, and then you add to it the fact that you don't know anything because you are now dumb. You don't know math, you don't know science, you know
Hmm.
nothing. All the kids come with something,
Yeah.
and it's not because they don't know that in English that they cannot. So it's, and in the school everybody was like, oh, but no, I cannot do that. How are they going to learn English? Like, they are exposed to English at all times.
Hmm.
It's not because you're giving one paper that has their language in there
They
that
won't.
you are not teaching that kid. Like, you were giving them a chance of knowing what you were talking about in that classroom. So
Hmm.
they're not as lost. And they were like, oh, looking at me like, oh, I never thought that way.
When I taught
Okay.
older kids and they had devices with them in
Mm-hmm.
the classroom, they brought their own devices, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whenever I had a kid that was like knew very little or no English, I told them to keep the app on,
Mm-hmm.
like Google, because you have the
Translator. Yep.
voice
Mm-hmm.
recognition and all. I told them whenever you need, just turn that on and use it so you can understand what's happening in the lesson.
Yes.
And it was way better for their learning because they wouldn't feel that way. They wouldn't feel that they didn't know
Yep.
like something, right? They knew something.
Yes.
So
Yes.
that's also a way to accommodate um,
Yes.
for the learning, right? Because that's one of the
Mm-hmm.
things that it should be the starting point. When we are helping kids access learning, it's not just about kids that have a diagnosis or not,
Mm-hmm.
right? Whenever we make a slight adjustment to the way the activity is presented, that can
Mm-hmm.
make a huge difference. When we tell our students, it's okay for you to just respond to me orally, you don't need to write because they get frustrated or anxious when they're writing.
Mm-hmm.
We're accommodating so they can access their learning and we can actually know what they know, right?
Yes. I think it's important to say, to explain what is accommodation. Like, and accommodation is when we create different types of activities, or when we provide different instruction so that that kid can understand what's going on, that kid can participate. So one way of including every children in the classroom is by accommodating. I
Hmm.
think in elementary school years, we do that all the time.
Yeah.
And we do that without even thinking, because our kids are so diverse and they come in so many different shapes and forms that you're like,
Yes.
oh, well, so I'm going to try to reach everyone. And I think we are used to do that. When they get to middle school and high school, things start getting a little bit more complicated because the content is so, like, so much content, and teachers are so focused on delivering the content, then I think they take less time on trying to reach the kid where they are
Hmm.
as we do in elementary school. And I have no experience in middle school or high school. I just have experience as a mom.
Yeah.
So I cannot talk about that department. But that's how I see.
Hmm.
And from all the, like, I'm taking an ESOL endorsement and a gifted endorsement, and for both of them, like when I read the post, and it's with every kind of educator in Florida. So once I'm taking those endorsements and I see like their posts, like you can see who's elementary school and who's not,
Hmm.
because for us in elementary is even. difficult to answer the questions because we already do so much. Like we already have visuals, we already have so many, like we already have the spatial difference in our classrooms. There are so many
Hmm.
things. Like, I have a kid that like he runs. He has so much energy. He runs. He doesn't have any diagnosis, and I don't think he should ever have. But he runs. So my classroom is a zigzag
Okay.
because at the same time I have another kid that has a bone disease, and if he falls he might break his bone, so I
Hmm.
cannot like have, so this is already an accommodation, this is already something that I'm doing in order to help this kid that has
Hmm.
no label, that is not considered a special need kid.
Yeah. And you mentioned something about the difference between what we do in primary, in elementary school, and what is done in middle and upper school. And I think the major difference is that in lower school, in a way, we are preparing them for what's coming next. And in middle and upper school and high school, they are preparing already for exams and
Yes.
tests. So whenever you're talking about the demands of standardized tests, it's different. So, for
Mm-hmm.
example, if a school follows, let's say, the Cambridge curriculum, Cambridge has rules that whenever you need an accommodation, you need to have a diagnosis, and your
Mm-hmm.
diagnosis must be 3 years prior to the exam taking.
Oh,
S-
really?
Yeah.
Hmm.
So I think that is one of the things that teachers in middle school will just say, oh, you have no diagnosis. I don't need to accommodate for you. It's
Move
your
on.
problem because
Makes
you're not going to
sense.
have that accommodation when you're taking the exam.
Mm-hmm.
So that's really bad because sometimes during the lessons, you're doing things and you can do simple things that are actually preparing them, and you are accommodating for what they need in the moment. So
Mm-hmm.
they don't actually need the accommodation later on, right? And then, in a way, we can talk a little bit about intervention and how intervention makes a huge difference. So, going back
Yeah.
to where we are grounded, right?
Mm-hmm.
How do you feel about intervention and how intervention is done in your context, and how, because one thing is what we teachers do in the
Mm-hmm.
classroom on a daily basis. Okay, I'm going to just
Yeah.
adjust here the task. You're going
Mm-hmm.
to access the curriculum the same way, but the way you're
Mm-hmm.
going to present your work is going to be different, or the way you're going to participate in the lesson is going to be different, and minor,
Yes.
not so minor adjustments that we
Yes.
do along the way. But what is your experience with intervention when what we do in the classroom is not enough and things need to be done with
So,
extra help?
here I'm teaching kindergarten for the past 3 years. So it's an age where they all come without any labels. It's their first, most of the kids here is their first experience at school. And so what happens here is like there are two processes that we go through. So one is the 504. 504 is like it's a big umbrella. So it's like you have students and they have needs, but they do not have a diagnosis yet. So I have this kid in my classroom, extremely bright, smart. Beginning of the year, I called mom. I'm like, like I had never had a kid that could not pay attention the way he cannot, like
Hmm.
focus, and it's like, and there are things like sometimes he spends like 25 minutes that they were supposed to be, I don't know, like completing something that we had done before, right? And he doesn't even get his pencil from his pencil case. And then I go to him, I talk to him 100 times, and then I ask him like, why can't, like what's going on, what is in your brain? And the other day he looked at me, he's like, Miss Pinto, do you know on your TV there's an arrow, but you never press that arrow? I am wondering what is in the arrow and that you never press and why you never press it. And I'm like, are you thinking about that for the past 20 minutes? And he has, yes. And every day I think about it. I'm like, okay, do you want me to press the button for you? So I went there, pressed the button, and I show him everything that was there. But like sometimes it's not like he's focusing on some other random things that are
Mm-hmm.
in his brain. And
Mm-hmm.
that when you ask him to tell you what is in his brain, it's amazing. You're like, oh, that is like nobody would ever think about that.
Yeah.
Like, why are you focused on that? But let's unpack it and let's move on, right? Um, so with him, we've got a 504 because what does the 504 do? The 504 gives him an extended time of doing activities. And so there are some aspects. So we sat down with the counselor and the mom, and they went to the doctor. The doctor said that it's too early to assess him for attention. He's not hyperactive, but there is an attention thing there that we cannot diagnose. Um, and my when I talked to the mom, it was like I do not want a label for him, but I don't want the first grade teacher to spend 4 months trying to figure out why he's not paying attention.
Mm-hmm.
I want her to get there and say, "Oh, he has a 504. Let me see what is his 504. Oh, it's attention. So I need to touch his shoulder every 5 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
It's written there on his 504. Every 5 minutes you have to touch him,
Mm-hmm.
or you touch his head, or or you give him a pencil. You have to interact with him every 5 minutes.
Yeah.
So he needs to be sitting at a place where I'm going to be walking around all the time so I can touch him.
Mm-hmm.
So there are some things, like some plans that we came up with, the counselor, the mom, and I, of things that will help him so we can keep on looking out for him. I think maybe when he grows, he might get evaluated or he might get something, but for now, that's what I could do.
Mm-hmm.
There's another umbrella here in special needs education that it's the developmentally delayed. So I think there are 7 different labels. I think the book here even talks about the different labels. Um, but this developmentally delayed is the big umbrella they give to the little kids when they present some type of challenge that we cannot figure out yet. You cannot say that they are dyslexic. You cannot say that they are autistic. You cannot give them a label like they
Mm-hmm.
are too young, but there's something that is preventing them from learning like the other kids in the classroom.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And they might be smart, there might be many different things happening with them, but like some of them it's like motor development, they don't have the fine motor skills, some of them, but then you can put them on this big umbrella of developmentally delayed. In those developmentally delayed, it's the same thing. You go through a process, you sit down with a counselor, come up with strategies, and it's written down there all the things that you need.
Mm-hmm.
The kid with the bone disease that I talked about, we have a 504 for him because it's a physical 504.
Okay.
So we know if he's going to participate in activity, it's not like when we go down the stairs, like he cannot be in the line or we go up the stairs. He needs to be on the other side because
Mm-hmm.
he needs to walk by himself. Because if someone falls, it's way more dangerous for him than it is for everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
So the 504 creates those accommodations and developmentally delayed, but developmentally delayed is already part of ESE, which is the special needs department. So usually the difference is that the ESC is going to have a person, most schools have a third person that comes to your classroom for intervention. That's why I'm getting to it. So this person is going to come to your classroom. Sometimes it's stay in your classroom, like let's say social emotional needs, right? Knowing how to play a game, knowing how to be independent during small group time. Knowing, so this person is going to be for the 30 minutes of small group time. So it's going to come to your classroom, and this person is going to be with that kid and is
Okay.
going to be telling her, oh, now you should ask. Did you ask? Or it's going to be giving strategies and giving tools for that kid to develop in the classroom. Sometimes the ESC professional takes the kid out of the classroom for a certain period of time. So in Georgia, the school that I worked at, they had a ESC classroom that the kids would go there like during language arts time or during math time, whatever subject it was something that they needed more support,
Mm-hmm.
and then they follow a different category. But then for the ESE, they usually have to have a label. So they have to be evaluated. They have to have like doctor's evaluation
Mm-hmm.
to get
Okay.
into the ESE. So in the classroom, our we as a teacher, what we have to do, and I'm telling like as like my it's not that that's not all that I do, but our job is to make sure that we follow the plans that were set up by the IEPs. Those are the documents for the ESC kids, and we have to find to follow what's in the 504. And for that, for both of them, we're gonna have like accommodations for testing. So if most of them during testing, the kids that have an IEP or a 504, they leave the classroom and they take because they need to take the test in a small group setting. So they go to a classroom where they're going to be able to stand up every 30 minutes. There's going to be a break every 30 minutes, or there's, like they have
Mm-hmm.
the other strategies for test taking. Other than that, in the classroom, we follow the plans that were shared with us, and we use our best knowledge to approach and to help these kids.
Mm-hmm.
That's how it is.
The person that is said that is the ESE, do they have a specific degree or do you know?
Yeah, they are special needs teachers.
Okay.
They are special educators.
Mm-hmm. And you have a
They are
different
graduated.
degree for that, right? It's not.
Yeah, it's a different degree. Well, you can take it under like I think if I because I have the education like kindergarten through sixth, I think I can take an endorsement in ESE
Mm-hmm.
or but all teachers have to have like every 5 years we have to apply for our recertification, and there are some hours that we have to spend learning in order. So we need some
Mm-hmm.
certificates to prove that we are so we can get recertified. And there is I don't know if it's 30 or 60 hours of ESE training. So we all have to participate in ESE trainings, even if you are not the ESE educator.
That is really nice. I'm gonna.
Well, it's
No.
that's a theory, right? That's
Yeah, but at least
there's a
that's
plan.
part of the plan, right?
Yep. Hmm.
And let's say this again, our realities are completely different, right? So
Hmm.
Vanessa is in the public system, I'm in the private system. So unfortunately, things are different, right?
Yes.
Um, and things are even more different because I work in an international school. So
Hmm.
supposedly there's no law, educational law, and we talked about this already. There's no educational
Hmm.
law that international schools have to comply with,
Hmm.
right? Depending on the country, they just have to follow the local requirements,
Hmm.
and that's it. I'm not going to go into specifics about that, but thinking about
Hmm.
my reality, right? So um, things are changing in education, and I've been working as a teacher, not as a classroom teacher, but as a teacher for oof, 25 years almost.
It's a lie. You could almost retire, right?
In Brazil, if I go back to Brazil, I can, right? But not
Yeah,
here.
I'll never do, but let's move on.
Yes, so I just have to think about retirement here. Anyways, um, I always um, thought about special needs and inclusion because one of the first places that I worked at, I had some kids that it was early years, it was preschool. It was not even preschool, it was nursery, so they were very
Hmm.
young. And I already had kids there that showed a different development than others. So I was always curious. And um, when I was still in college, one of the two options that I had for studying and writing my final paper, one was bilingual education, and the other one was special education. So I was always very keen on researching and learning about this. I remember that in one of the schools that I taught music, I had in the same group, and it was a school that was known in the region for being inclusive. And
Mm-hmm.
uh, in the same group, I had four different disabilities. I had a kid that had a motor disability. His muscles were uh, different. I don't remember the name of the
Mm-hmm.
syndrome, but he couldn't stand properly. He couldn't turn his neck,
Mm-hmm.
his head. So
Mm-hmm.
I had to adapt my music lessons so he could participate. I had a kid that had Down syndrome,
Mm-hmm.
but no cognitive impact. So
Mm-hmm.
um, mild adjustments were needed for her. I
Mm-hmm.
had a kid that was nearly blind, and I had a kid that couldn't speak. So I had to accommodate all of that into my music lessons. So it was,
Mm-hmm.
I started participating in symposiums and things and really go for and study and all of that. Since then, I always had kids with different needs, always.
Mm-hmm.
And I always tried to think about them when I was planning my lessons
Mm-hmm.
because sometimes it was just a little thing that I had to
Mm-hmm.
change in my music lessons that would accommodate for their needs. And it was easy to do. And it wasn't going to be any harm for the other ones, right?
Mm-hmm.
When I moved to the classroom, I had to focus on other things, right? Because then it was more of the learning disabilities,
Mm-hmm.
and I really needed to think about those. Um, Recently, I noticed that for some reason, I'm chosen to teach the kids that are autistic. So
Mm-hmm.
whenever there's an autistic kid,
Mm-hmm.
they always come to my classroom.
Uh-huh.
And it's really intense
Mm-hmm.
because they're all very different, right?
There's no
And
recipe.
no, everything that you think you know, new group, new kids, okay, let's learn again, right?
Yes.
And it's interesting to see how my way of viewing things in general has changed so much
Mm-hmm.
because of that, right? So I started paying attention to things that I never paid attention before. I started thinking about how my environment needs to be so I don't overwhelm their senses.
Uh-huh.
So if you go around the school and you are entering every single classroom, you will notice a difference. Right now,
Mm-hmm.
my classroom is not exactly as I want it to be because unfortunately I have to adjust some things and I cannot take everything off the walls.
Mm-hmm.
But I we have one thing in the school that is peer learning. So every other week we go and observe other teachers teaching so
Mm-hmm.
we can
Yeah.
keep our game up,
Learn
right?
and help. Yep.
I almost had a sensory overload when I entered the classroom of that teacher because he has so many things stuck on the walls.
Ha,
And
you would have an overload in my classroom.
no, it's insane. Not only on the walls, but he uses the flip charts.
Uh-huh.
So he has a line or two or three in his
Uh-huh.
classroom full of visuals and written things, and you can't even read them. But,
Mm-hmm.
anyways,
Mm-hmm.
it works for him. But I know that some of my previous students wouldn't be able to cope.
Uh-huh.
They wouldn't
Mm-hmm.
at all. Thinking about visuals and sensory needs, I had students that were very, very visual and they were, their interest was reading, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I couldn't have them facing one of the walls of my classroom because that's where I have the sounds, the phonics
Mm-hmm.
cards, and the English display board. I couldn't have them facing that board, that wall, because otherwise they wouldn't focus on anything else. So
Mm-hmm.
when I do my seating plan, they would always sit facing the other way.
The other side. Mm-hmm.
So these are some minor things
Yes.
that I learned through experience, right? That,
Mm-hmm.
okay, this is not going to work. I cannot have the kid here. If we're thinking about ADHD kids, right? If you're
Mm-hmm.
talking about the hyperactive ones, if you're doing floor time, you need to give them something that they can lean on, not all, but some, that they can lean on, or it's like give them a bouncy seat or something different because
Mm-hmm.
they need the sensory input
The movement. Yep.
so they can actually pay attention. I had some lessons that I taught with some of my kids with a scrap paper and a pencil, and they would doodle the whole lesson
Mm-hmm.
because they needed that to
To pay
focus.
attention. Yes.
So if we think about inclusion, it's not simple, it's not easy,
Mm-hmm.
but
Yes.
this kind of strategy
Mm-hmm.
sometimes they are so simple to do,
Yes.
but sometimes people don't know. And sometimes other teachers they come to my classroom and they go like, "Why is that kid with that
Mm-hmm.
doll?" Because that kid has a sensory need. He's always touching other people's
Mm-hmm.
hair.
Mm-hmm.
So he's bothering others, he's disrupting
Uh-huh.
others. A way for me
Yes.
to adjust that is okay, he has one doll and he is just touching that hair and he's fine with it. He's not
Mm-hmm.
disrupting anyone else and things are flowing. And I had some teachers coming and observing my lessons, and they would go, I don't know how you manage. I'm like, what do you mean? No, because they're always standing up and they're walking at the back of the classroom.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to drink water. They are fussing on their places. How can you cope? I said, if I don't allow them to do that,
Mm-hmm.
learning won't happen.
Yep. You were in first grade, right?
Yes.
Yes, I think the like when we have older grades coming to our classroom, it's like I don't know, the other day I subbed for fourth grade, but I subbed like during extended day, right? And then I'm there and the third grade teacher comes and she's like, if they're talking, you let me know. And I'm like, oh, they are like I it's been 30 minutes. I haven't heard a voice. And then one of the kids said, well, Miss Pinto, but do your kids talk? I'm like, of course they talk. They're 5 year olds. Like they talk all the time,
Mhm.
like nonstop. And they're like, oh, you have to give them consequences. Like, I am giving them consequences, dude, but they need to talk.
Yeah.
Like, it's impossible for them to be quiet for long periods of time. And I cannot be quiet for long periods of time. And I am not even 5 years old. So I think there are some, like, I don't know, it's complicated what you said about like other teachers coming because at the same time, like, we have so many different backgrounds and inputs. Like we have a teacher there in our school that she's been there for 20 something years, right? And one day she said, like, oh, but learning doesn't have to be fun all the time because we were talking about like making it more engaging for the kids, that following the curriculum is a bummer, that we don't like it, and blah, blah. And she's like, but it doesn't have to be fun all the time. And I was like, well, but it's not about being fun. It's about having them all and she's an amazing teacher. Like Maya has her this year and she loves her. She's like, mom, she makes me understand like the content that I think it's very tricky. So it's like it's about understanding and meeting the kid where they are,
Mhm.
but it's not every teacher that has first that patience, second that interest.
Mhm.
And there's a lot of teachers that are going to be thinking, but what about the 23 other ones that you have? Like, they get like bothered with kids walking around? Like, I have this conversation all the time in my classroom about how everybody needs different things. Like, some kids need glasses, some kids need to stand up, some kids need to go to the bathroom 5 times in the middle of a story.
Mhm.
Some kids, like, each kid needs different things. And like we have to, it's not that we allow them to, but we have to help them to develop strategies where they're going to feel comfortable and confident in learning, and they're going to be able to use the strategies by themselves. And I think that's where we play a huge role in the primary years,
Mhm.
which is looking at them and saying, I'm here with you, and we're going to figure that out together.
Yeah.
And then you can look at them and say, hey, right now your emotions. Like when Maya, no, when Larissa was little, I think Larissa was 5, maybe. We read that book, The Whole Brain Child. And then the Whole Brain Child, at some point, they talk about like how the reasoning is your thumb and the emotions, um, or the other way around, whatever. So
Okay.
then it's like the emotion and the reasoning. And then I do that a lot with my kids. I'm like, hey, your emotion is way too big, and your reasoning right now, mm-mm. So what can we do now?
Mhm.
So and like we talk about flexible brain and stuck brain. Like I had kids already looking at each other and say, your brain's a little stuck right now. You want to take a deep breath? We can take a deep breath. And they take a deep breath together.
Yeah.
So I think that's amazing, not only for the kid that struggles or the kid that needs the extra, but for everybody around and for everybody surrounding them to understand that it is okay.
Mhm.
Like it's normal.
Yeah.
It's like the other day my TV didn't work and I was very frustrated. And I'm like, guys, I have no clue what's going on and I'm very frustrated right now. And then one of my kids said, Miss Pinto, do you want to stay 1 minute in the calming session? And I'm like, I think I need. Can you get something from there for me? Because I need to be holding it. And then she went there, brought it, and I was like pulling that thing that
Yeah.
so I was breaking that. That I was frustrated and like understanding that everybody will be like will go through all those emotions. And
Mhm.
so it's like you are part of a community and you're gonna meet people around you. They are gonna feel that. And we have to understand that we are not all the same and we are going to need different things. So we have two options. One, we can be just butting heads and struggle and like try to force something, or we can try to learn together and develop strategies together.
Yeah.
Because that's what you said, like the strategy, it's not going to be harmful to anyone else. right? It's going to be beneficial most of
Yeah.
the times. The strategies that we use, they benefit most kids in the classroom.
Yeah. I think you said some things that are very important and that we should emphasize. And maybe we can have a part two because it's already a long episode. And I feel that we just started talking about it. There's still a lot
Yes.
that we can talk about.
Uh-huh.
But you said three things that I think are really important. So first of all, we need to meet them where they are at. A starting point. We need to know
Mm-hmm.
what they're capable of. We need to try and understand what they already know and
Mm-hmm.
help them build from there. We scaffold, right? Second thing, strategies and tools and things, they, especially in the lower grades, they're going to be there at all times. But it's important that kids understand that it's okay to have different needs and it's okay that they are aware of the things that they need. They should be aware. And the tools and the strategies, they can be used by everyone as long as they are not disrupting the learning of the others,
Yes.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So when you mention, what about the other 23?
Mm-hmm.
This I think it's what we have to focus. So
Mm-hmm.
the needs of that one kid, if you're lucky to have just one kid in the classroom that has the different
Something.
needs, um, everything that you were using with that kid to scaffold their learning, to make sure that they are accessing the curriculum, because at the end of the day we have to cover the curriculum, right?
Mm-hmm.
um, Everything that you're doing for that one kid, as long as it's not harmful for the others, that's not distracting others. And usually, teachers, we use things that are actually good for everyone, right? So please trust
Mm-hmm.
us. Trust that we know what we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes we do. Most of the times we do. Sometimes we don't.
Yeah.
Sometimes we just want to go to the
It's
calming
just a
corner
gut feeling.
and just lose our
Yes.
things there,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
But most of the times we're putting our things together and we are
Mm-hmm.
actually aware of the things that we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, as a person that has the attention span of a 6 year old, I forgot the third thing that you mentioned because I just wrote two. I just wrote down two of the things and I forgot the other one.
Yay.
Uh, One thing, my mom, she was a teacher for her entire life. And she said, and that stuck with me, she said that we become our students. As teachers, we become our students. So there was a time where she taught only uh, old people because it was,
Mm-hmm.
uh, I don't know how, it was for adults. I don't
Yeah, it was
remember the
like a
name, not
social
even,
project or something.
yeah.
Yes.
So she was grumpy and complaining every single day, like her students, because they were old, right? And then she went back to teaching middle school, so she was a teenager, always like. So I think I'm becoming my students now because I talk nonstop. I cannot keep myself still,
I
and that's it. I forgot already.
think I could never stay still. Like, but that's okay. But my kids, I think it is true because sometimes I see myself in my students, or sometimes I'm laughing at things and I'm telling my husband and my daughters, I'm like, hey, I have no idea what happened today. So this, and that. And then I'm cracking up. I'm like, hey, it was so funny. And they're like, it's not funny, Mom. I'm like, how come you don't think it's funny? Like, we were laughing for 10 minutes in my classroom. It's like, Mom, not
No.
funny. So maybe.
and and sometimes, as I said, I went to the classroom of the teacher
Mhm.
and I had a sensory overload. Sometimes I feel that I'm becoming my special students because, oh my. Sometimes I
Like it
am the
was being
kid that is saying,
alone.
I'm paying attention to that one arrow. Like, what is that going to do?
What's that thing? But put us like go to training, a whole day training. We have a lot of those here. So go to a whole day training, and then by 1 o'clock, you're like, I cannot anymore. I cannot handle anymore. We have like something called a cohort. So they get all the teachers from the same grade level, and they put us in a room to learn about like the curriculum and changes and whatnot. So it's like part math, part science, part language arts, and we talk about data and what to do with the data, strategy, blah. Like you sit with teachers that you have never seen before. You were just meeting them. Well, of course, by you go for the whole year once a month. Then by the end of the year, you know them. You're all all their
BFFs.
life stories. But then you're looking at them. You're like, I cannot anymore. Are you writing it down? Because I have no idea what the person just said. And you're always like, that's what our kids do. Like, so if you put yourself in that position, say, what would I need
Yeah.
to make sure that I am learning and I am focused? So that's it. Like, what do they need to make sure that if they stay with you the whole day, they are still happy to be there at the end of the day. And I love when my kids look at me and say, huh, Miss Pinto, is it time to go home already? This day was too fast. Like my friend, the day is the same every day, but I'm so glad you felt it. It was fast.
Yeah.
It means that you were not bored, you were not like upset, and that the
Yeah.
day went in a nice and fun way.
Yeah.
So that's it. Let's move on and let's keep on doing that way.
Yeah. So
That's the best compliment I get from my kindergarten
yeah.
kids.
So let's do that for our listeners. Let's just wrap
Yes.
this up and we will do a second one because I think we still have a lot to talk about and I think
Yeah.
Vanessa can share a lot about her experience with gifted because that is a whole new world
Yes.
of
Giftedness and twice exceptional because
yeah,
most of the gifted kids are twice exceptional,
yeah,
which means that they have more than one.
yeah.
So
And we can talk
that's
about that.
interesting.
And that's another thing that I really love
Yeah,
learning about.
that's exciting. Yes.
Um, but I'm going to be honest, that's one of my struggles to accommodate for those,
The twice exceptional, the gifted.
the gifted.
Yeah, they are so difficult, and I think that's why it's so important because most of the times they are the bored ones. They are the ones
Yeah.
that are running around. They are the ones we think they are hyperactive, and that
Mm,
might not be that.
yeah.
And it's not because it's easy for them and you give them extra work, but we're gonna talk about that another time because it's so much to
Yeah.
talk.
So that's it. Thank you very much. Please leave your comments, your likes, subscribe.
Share it.
let's let's do that. Let's share this with the community because it's good. It's good to
Yeah.
share and learn with others. Thank you.
Bye bye.
Bye.